July 4th weekend, the heart of the Voice of College Football Summer Festival. And it is a requirement that you say it that way. Summer Festival here at the Voice of College Football. Remember, noon on Monday, that's noon Eastern time, Thursday at 6 Eastern, and Friday at 9 Eastern time. This is a special edition of the Voice of College Football live with you as we take your calls throughout the night for a number of reasons. We've got a very special guest coming on in a few minutes, as you could probably see from the title of the live stream. Also, of course, there is so much going on. Hopefully, you've checked out the videos that I posted in the last few days. Once the news broke that USC and UCLA headed for the Big Ten, much speculation about Notre Dame, of course, being offered by the Big Ten and mulling over that decision. Washington and Oregon applying for Big Ten membership. And then are the other options, of course, in the Pac-12, which include Cal and Stanford, most notably Utah and Colorado as well. The destination of Arizona and Arizona State, you would think, would be more so the Big 12. And then, of course, the Big 10 also looking at options, possibly looking at options by way of the ACC. So we will explore all those things. And again, we will take your calls a little bit later. And, of course, we posted videos, again, looking at Oregon situation and Notre Dame. And I've got a video that's going to post tomorrow morning where I am putting down the comparison between Stanford, Cal, Oregon, Utah, Washington, and Colorado from all different directions. But first, let's go to our guest tonight. We got Mike Vanderjagt here to talk some football. Mike, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. Appreciate you being here tonight. Of course, Mike is the most accurate kicker in the NFL of all time until somebody retires. Namely, there's a few guys out there that could take your spot.
As much as I kibosh them every Sunday, they keep making them. So I guess,
they keep making them. They're pretty good. You were pretty good too.
They're
we talked
good.
a few weeks ago on Golden Blue Dudes channel, and it was fun because we get started talking about NFL history, and I can get after that for sure. So appreciate you being here.
No problem.
And West Virginia. So my audience, mostly college football fans. Of course, there's a crossover there, a lot of NFL fans, but we'll start with West Virginia. How much do you continue to keep up with West Virginia football?
More recently than I had in the past. I certainly, when I was playing, it's like the family at the U, right? Everybody from the U are always going to be tied together. Same thing with West Virginia. So teammates, guys we're playing against, if you knew they were from West Virginia, certainly you would go and interact with them a little bit. But I just bought a house in upstate New York in August, so I'm now kind of 6 months on the East Coast. So I got to go to 2 West Virginia games last year, which was really the first time I had been back to Morgantown in, decades, unfortunately. So I fell in love with it again, and I've already got my Pitt, West Virginia tickets for this fall and planned on spending a lot more time in Morgantown than I have in the past, that's for sure.
Do you keep track of all these changes going on in college football? Conference expansion, all that business?
What I'm sure you've talked about it. The USC UCLA thing is just unbelievable to me. I don't. Can you explain it to me? I'm sure you've already probably beat it like a dead horse. But
we're gonna do it some more because people can't get enough of it. It's all about money, of course. That's what it comes down to is money, and the Big Ten can go out and grab the LA market, and they can offer USC and UCLA so much more TV revenue than the Pac-12 can, and that's pretty much what it comes down to.
Is it really going to come down to 2 power conferences, and that's the extent of it, similar to AFC, NFC? It's just going to be the Big Ten and the SEC? Is that where this is headed?
I hope not. I don't want it headed that way, but even before all this started, those were the 2 that owned the sport, made the most money, most rear ends in the seats. And now with the additions here in the last year, that only widens the gap and now gives them more leverage to sweeten the pot for other teams to jump on.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the NIL and the transfer portal has been a disaster for college sports, and now it just, to me, it just keeps getting worse, not better. I mean, I guess money talks, and it's NIL is money, the power conferences is money, TV deals is money, and money is the root of all evil, right?
Yeah, it is. If you love it too much, yeah, it's a commodity. like a lot of people say, it's an amplifier. If you're going to do some good with it, that's awesome, man. The more money you got, the more good you can do with it. But if you're going to, it's going to get into some people's heads, which I can imagine being in NFL locker rooms for more than a decade for you. Guys can obviously handle it, because if you look at any NFL roster and if you look at the salary list, there's always guys that are better than other guys, not making as much money as the other guy because of circumstances and the way things play out, and guys get better, guys decline and in the middle of contracts. So did you ever see or get the feeling that that was a problem?
Yeah. I mean, a quick story is I was driving home from a talk show with Rob Zamner. So Rob Zamner is an NHL player in Canada, and he played in the NHL a long time. And I was just finishing up in Toronto, and I was heading down to Indianapolis for training camp. And I was elated, right? I was like, oh my God, I've just tripled my salary. I've gone from, 50 grand in the CFL to, 150 in the NFL as a rookie. And I was like, I'm never going to, I'll play for rookie minimum the entire time. I don't care. And Rob's like, that'll change. I was like, no way. And then when you get into the NFL and you realize you're good, and then you look around at other kickers who are making $1 million, and then your mentality changes, right? It's just like, well, if they're making $1 million and I'm this good, I want $1 million. So, it does drive you, and you do look around in the locker room and see this guy's making, 400 and this guy's making 14 million. You definitely sizing guys up based on their contracts, and it's really sad because that really shouldn't be the way the world is. But if you're in it for such a short amount of time, the theory is you got to get what you can get while you can get it, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I don't fault anybody in this. And keeping it with the college game, the idea of NIL makes complete sense to me, because we got 14 and 15-year-old kids running on TikTok and Instagram, making a fortune, making stupid music videos. So why can't a college athlete, while the university's making a ton of money on their jersey, why can't they make money based on their celebrity as well? So it all sounds good, and I'm all for it individually, but when you throw it all together and just throw it out there with no guidelines, regulations, keeping this thing on course, then it becomes a mess.
What's crazy is that when this first went down, and everybody pre NIL, and everybody was talking about, players, college kids should get paid. They should get paid. Oh my God, how are they not getting? And I always looked at it. I was like, well, they are getting paid. I mean, if you're standing there on scholarship and the kid next to you is not on scholarship, you're making 40 or 50 grand a year just because you don't have to pay for your education. So to me, I was kind of always on the other side of it going, listen, you're getting $250,000 worth of schooling for free, so I wouldn't complain. So, and then now, and you're right, the NIL is one thing, but to just let it be absolute chaos is not good, and as I think we even talked about it on the Gold and Blue Dude the other day, is that now your alumni are controlling your football program. I mean, even the who was it, Charlie Batch, that offered $1 million to go to Eastern Michigan for Caleb Williams for a year or something like that. Was that the story?
Did he really? I didn't hear that.
No, I
Charlie Batch, huh? Wow.
Was it Charlie Batch? I don't know.
That would make sense. That's where he went to school. Yeah, he went to one of those directional Michigan schools. I always get it mixed up. One of them.
Well, and if you look it up, somebody that social media, Caleb Williams was offered $1 million by a financial firm that I think Charlie Batch was associated with, was offering him $1 million to go to his school for 1 year. That's ludicrous.
It's ludicrous. But see, what I can't get a handle on is that if it's, supply and demand in a free marketplace, and if a private company wants to say, it's not the school. Now, the issues I have is, number one, I don't think it should seep into the recruiting process, and it's impossible to regulate it that it doesn't. So theoretically, these schools aren't supposed to be able to say to these student athletes, well, if you come to our school, we're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. That's supposed to be completely out of the recruiting process until they sign and enroll, and then the NIL comes. I think we all know a little bit better than that.
And that's where Saban came in with, Fisher a few weeks ago, and Dion that's exactly what Nick Saban was saying, and he probably went about it the wrong way, but his point was, you can buy recruits, and to me, that just is outrageous, and that is not what college football should be about. And and closer to home, Arch Manning is now a Texas guy, and we'll see how much money Arch Manning makes in his college football career, and it's going to be astronomical.
And the quarterback he's going to be competing against, who hasn't played a game yet, Quinn Ewers, went to Ohio State for a year and made $1.4 million and didn't throw a pass.
That is, where is this money coming from? I mean, where are these TikTokers and college football players? And anyway, it's not.
Mike, I got to think that maybe one thing that's going to hold down the ridiculous transfers all over the place might be, if my company wants to invest in Arch Manning and we're big Texas fans, well, then part of that stipulation is we're paying you as long as you're a Texas football player. So you can't leave. I would think that they would put those in the contract.
Oh, I'm sure there's no question that they're not going to be paying him if he leaves. So that's a good point, and that maybe keeps them in-house a little longer, but I don't know. I don't even have a solution. I don't even have to try to figure out a solution. I know it's a mess, and I'm not a big fan of it, but I'm one guy, and I'm certainly not going to be able to offer my opinion and have anything change. So, you're the voice of college football, so you got to be able to have a little bit of leverage in your life. No,
Nobody's told me about that.
Like you do.
Yeah, I haven't figured out where that leverage is. I'm going to work it on my behalf first. We're going to take care of me, and then I'll start dealing with these other issues out there. Let's get back to the fun stuff in your career, because I find it interesting. I didn't know until we were on with Golden Blue Dude that you punted as well as was a place kicker, because, forgive me here as a voice of college football, and the folks that watch here would think that I can recite every statistic in the world, and I constantly remind them, no, nobody knows everything. I didn't realize that you were at West Virginia. I watched you throughout the NFL. And so then after we were on with Golden Blue Dude, I was like, how did I lose track of him? I looked you up and saw punter, place kicker, West Virginia, 2 seasons. So I thought must have went to junior college and then to the CFL. So you weren't like some big star college football kicker that made it right to the NFL.
It's crazy. My story is actually quite unique. I was drafted by Saskatchewan in, I think it was 92 or 91 even, and I had no idea. I was a junior at West Virginia and already been drafted by Saskatchewan. So I think in the draft up there, you actually get to hold their rights for 2 years. So they sometimes draft you when you're not even technically draft eligible. So I went into my senior year kicking field goals after Todd Sauerbrunn beat me out as the punter. So I figured if I'm not going to punt,
he was pretty good.
I might as well kick. So I beat out Mark Johnson, who I saw last fall. He ended up being my holder. So that's quite the story in itself. But then, I went to Saskatchewan. I was cut in Saskatchewan in 93. I signed in Toronto in 94, was cut. I signed again in Toronto in 95 and was cut. I was then signed by Hamilton the next day down the street, was cut. I was then signed in the Arena League with the Minnesota Fighting Pike in 96 and was cut. And then I played 2 years in Toronto. I was signed in Toronto, coincidentally, by the same head coach that cut me in '93 in Saskatchewan is now the head coach in Toronto in '96. And, made the team and ended up being the Canadian MVP of the Grey Cup and went 14 for 14 in 2 playoffs runs. And then you're offered jobs all over the NFL to come work out. So I had 8 workouts in the NFL. I was offered a contract and a signing bonus with the Packers to be a punter. And then I was offered a bigger signing bonus to go to Indianapolis and compete with both the punter and the kicker. So I went into training camp in '98 in Indianapolis, and I did both. I punted against Chris Gardocki, who was the punter of the year before in the Pro Bowl, and I kicked against Kerry Blanchard, who was the Pro Bowl kicker of the year before. Yeah. So I'm standing there going against 2 guys that had been in the Pro Bowl in '96, and this is only '98. So my work was cut out for me. But the cool thing is my signing bonus for going to Indianapolis was basically half of a CFL salary. So my mentality was, listen, if I go to Indy and I get cut, financially, I would have missed half the CFL season, but my signing bonus made up for it, and I looked at it as a no-lose situation. So it was, but I led the CFL in punting, and I was offered a deal by Green Bay, so technically, I guess I can do both.
Mike, you're bringing up names I haven't thought about for 15 or 20 years. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah. So when you were kicking in West Virginia, were you thinking, I'm good enough to be in the NFL? Or was it just the thing that I just, whatever the next step is, the next step, and you just got better and better and better?
Yeah, I mean, I never at any time, really, even in the CFL, I was never thinking NFL. I've said this before. I just went day to day, game to game, kick to kick. You're just rolling along in life, right? Like for me, I just happened to be an athlete who could put the ball down and put it where they were asking me to put it. So, I never, even when I've had a good couple of years in Canada, all of a sudden, it really was all of a sudden, oh my God, my agent's going, listen, you've got the Bears asking about you, the Jets, the Vikings, the Seahawks, the Colts. It was nuts. And, you go down there as a naive kid from Oakville going, oh my God, what am I getting myself into? A funny story, when I went to work out for the Jets, I was up all night the night before in the hotel, feeling like crap. I go to kick for the Jets. It's raining. I look up into the building, and Bill Parcells is sitting there watching the workout through the window, and I had an awful workout. And halfway through the workout, I looked up, and the curtains were closed. So I think Bill had seen enough of my less than stellar performance with the Jets, but obviously it ended up pretty good.
So I got to think for a lot of these guys that come into the league, that if there's not immediate success, the kicker's treated differently in a lot of ways. Like you see kickers in the NFL, if you have like a 1-for-3 day and you don't have a track record, man, you're hanging by a thread, and you might be on the waiver wire the next day on Monday, and then you're looking for another job. That you got to really establish a track record to be secure. Otherwise, these other guys are just going from team to team and trying to hang on.
Well, I just think that you can sign a kicker on Saturday and have him come in and kick on Sunday, right? Like there's no game plan, there's no playbook to learn. You just put the ball down and you make kicks. And I think they're so expendable that, unless you really do have that year or 2 years where you've done well, you are 2 or 3 kicks away from being out the door. But the upside of that is, guys like Zane Gonzalez, for example, who struggled in Cleveland, and all of a sudden he has a good run in Arizona. So, you're not out of the league just because one team doesn't want you, because at some point another team's got a kicker who's struggling, and all of a sudden, even though you may have missed a few that you should have made, you still have that NFL resume that you've shown that you can make kicks in the league, and that's probably a head up on a guy that maybe just be a college guy who hasn't actually cracked into the lineup anywhere.
So, Mike, for a guy, regardless of how many kicks you made, from extra point distance, that was pretty much automatic. What would that have done to you if you would have been in the league now? And what it's been 4 or 5 years that they backed it up and it became a legitimate kick all of a sudden. How much would that have messed with you?
It would have, and you think to yourself, God, they miss so many extra points these days, and it's a 33-yard field goal. I mean, if you're missing a 33-yard field goal, you got problems. But my mentality was, it's just an extra point. Like, for me, I was known for field goal percentage. So an extra point, you almost take it off as it's an off play. So if you drop me back to 33, it still doesn't count as a field goal miss. And I probably would have had a hard time focusing enough, because even though it's 33, it is a missable kick, where an extra point back then, you could almost just close your eyes, swing your leg, and it's going in. And that's, I think the problem is that kickers kind of take it for granted, for one, and two, to them, their whole focus is making sure you're extremely accurate kicking field goals. And my point is that maybe they just take a little bit of a mental break when it comes to an extra point, and that's where the problems come in.
Did you ever have a PAT miss that mattered?
I did not. It was funny. I'm in Canada right now, and on TSN was the 40 craziest finishes, and one of them was John Carney on that crazy extra point when New Orleans did a crazy play and we're down 7, and then
against the Panthers, I think.
Jaguars in
Jaguars.
Yeah.
Panthers. Yeah. Jaguars.
Sorry, It was Saints at Jaguars. So
yeah.
The answer is no. And I missed one extra point in my career, and you'll appreciate this because of your radio background. I used to do X103, I think, in Indianapolis. And the guy that I used to go on with every week, he was like, listen, you got to throw up the X before a field goal. Cross your arms and give me the X. I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I said, I'll do it for an extra point, but I'm not doing it for a field goal. So we played the Raiders. I went out there for an extra point. I threw up the X, and the snap caught me off guard. I wasn't really paying attention. I went with the X, and I yanked the extra point, and it was the only extra point that I missed in my entire career because I was screwing around. And fortunately, we won the game, so it wasn't that big a deal. But you'd like to have it back because missing in my world is unacceptable.
Mike, getting back to West Virginia, I got a lot of Mountaineer fans here, hopefully. Can you give us a feel for why West Virginia is special? Morgantown, what's different about West Virginia football, the environment, the crowd, the campus, the whole deal?
Well, I think one easy answer is that, similar to Nebraska, it's the biggest thing in the entire state, right? There is no pro team. So when you look at the Mountaineers, it represents the entire state of West Virginia. So that's a definite advantage. I think, too, the landscape of the state is so beautiful that it's a very enticing place for you to go to school. It's always voted one of the top 2 or 3 party schools in the nation. So they certainly do enjoy having a good time. And the facilities are fantastic. So, when you put everything together, I've got a punter from Texas Tech that I coach, Austin McNamara, because I coach kickers and punters. I also have a kicker at Western Kentucky they're both All-American. So I take pride in those two, that I help them get scholarships, and now they're succeeding on Saturdays. But, even Austin McNamara tells me how crazy it is. And he gets to go to Oklahoma and Texas and all these places. And he keeps bringing up Morgantown as one of those special places. His dad goes to every game, home or away. And he's even mentioned how awesome Morgantown is. So, I took it for granted when I was there and kind of neglected it when I was in the NFL. But as you get older, you go back there and you realize what a special place it really is.
It sounded like from our conversation a couple of weeks ago that you didn't feel a lot of nerves or pressure.
Well, I mentioned this before. When the ball's going in, there really isn't a whole lot of pressure, right? Like it's as simple as, if a pitcher is going to be throwing strikes and he just feels like he's got the command of the strike zone, where's the pressure? You know, when you're a golfer and you know you're going to hit that draw down the middle 320, where's the pressure? And my mentality was, you know, if you're in my body and you're warming up, kicking field goals pregame, and you've had all this success, and it was so easy to kick the ball through the uprights. Like in practice, I always used to mess around with guys going, listen, what do you want, left half or right half? Because I just felt like the whole thing was too easy just to make it. I wanted the challenge of kicking it in the left half of the uprights or the right half of the uprights. You know, I challenged myself in practice because to me it was so easy. So when something is so easy for you, as long as you're concentrating and doing the things you should do, the ball's going in, and that's where kind of the pressure goes away. You certainly feel the pressure. You know, it obviously is I've talked to people recently where you feel like, I think being a field goal kicker in the National Football League is probably the most pressure-packed position in all of sports. You know, I challenge somebody to find something that's more pressure-packed than a field goal kicker in the NFL. I mean, obviously a quarterback, but they can miss. You know, they can throw interceptions and come back and play well. A kicker, very, very minimal room for error. So, you know, like I said, I feel the pressure and I understand it, but at the end of the day, as soon as that ball snapped and you see it's down, I felt comfortable and I knew where it was going.
It's funny, Mike, that you size it up like that, because I always felt as though the kicker had the most pressure and a punter has the least pressure. As long as an NFL punter catches the ball and can get it off, unless he shanks it and it's awful, as long as it's 40 yards, nobody's batting an eye.
You sound like me. I have said that 100 times, that the punter is the easiest job in sports. You literally can just bang it as far as there is no target you have to hit. You can shank it off the side of your foot and have it roll out of bounds at 38 yards and nobody cares. So you're absolutely right. I think being a field goal, and people are like, oh, I have a 23-year-old son in college, and they're all, why wasn't he a kicker? I'm like, heck no, I'm not making him a kicker. Not a chance, but he does punt a little bit. So, you know, that's the easy job, certainly.
The other thing is when you talk about the expectation and the standard of almost perfection, is looking back at your career, I'm going to ask you in both directions, the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. I don't want to fill in the blank of what I'm guessing is the lowest of lows, because I think you'll hit it. I think I got that one. But there were so many highs because you made so many big kicks. But was there one that was a little more special?
Well, we'll get to the Pittsburgh kick in a minute, but I had 2 field goals in a game against Denver. One was a 54-yarder with the last play of the game to tie, and then I hit a 51 in overtime to win. You know, those are 2 kicks that you're just like, this is unbelievable. That was one of those games that you'll always remember. I hit a 53-yarder at the buzzer to beat the Dolphins in Miami, when Dan Marino was on the other side with Jimmy Johnson and Peyton Manning and Jim Mora on the other side. And you're just, as the drive, and it's funny, Edgerrin James came over to me before the drive started. He's like, listen, where do you need it? And I was like, just get it to the 35. And the crazy thing is, it's exactly where Edgerrin ran to the last play before they called for a field goal, was the 35. He's running off the field, slapping 5. And he's like, I got you. And, you know, you're walking out there with as it turns out, Hall of Famers as coaches, Hall of Famers as quarterbacks. And the game comes down to some dude from Oakville, Ontario, Canada. And it's just one of those moments where, you know, I banged it right down the middle, and, you know, I could have flew home by myself. So that was a big one. The game where last game of the year against Houston in Houston, I had, I think, 39 in a row. The record was 40 going into the game, so I had to make 2 to break the record. You know, the game comes down to a game-winning field goal, and it's a 40-something yarder. And if I make the kick, we win the game, we win the division, we get a home field game in the playoffs, and then I obviously break Gary Anderson's record of 40 in a row. So that was a lot on your plate for one kick. And I remember talking to Rob Morris as the drive was going. I was telling him all this, and I was like, listen, and the city of Indianapolis gets $14 million for hosting a playoff game. That's kind of the revenue that's generated for a city that hosts a playoff game. I was like, do you want to go kick it? Just joking around. He's like, no, you go ahead. I was like, all right, I'll see you later. So, again, when you know it's going in, you can feel a little bit more comfortable about it. But, and then is the Pittsburgh kick the one you want to talk about?
That's what's in my mind. Yeah.
My therapist says it's okay to talk about at this point. So I'm just kidding. But the crazy thing about that entire season in Indianapolis was I was awful. I was awful in practice. I was awful in pregame. I had literally zero confidence in what I was doing. It's like your golf swing. When it's off, and you don't know what the hell you're doing wrong. So, I was 50% in practice and had no idea why. I was 50% in pregame, if not worse. I had no idea why. And that Pittsburgh kick was literally the second missed kick I had in 17 games. And I have no idea how I was player of the game in Jacksonville going 4 for 4, and I was awful. I couldn't make a thing in pregame, but I guess when it came down to the game, your rhythm kicks in. But going out for that kick in Pittsburgh, when I talked about confidence, it was the opposite. I was awful. I had no confidence. I didn't know where my head needed to be. I didn't know where I was supposed to be leaning. I was just a mess. And, I'm not surprised it didn't go in. I barely kept it inside the building. It was so far right. But, it's like when you're trying to hit a golf swing and you have no idea where to get your hands at the top of your swing. It's just hitting hope. And it wasn't one of those kicks that you certainly felt good about. But, I don't want to say SHIT happens, but, there's certainly in a career where you've played for 14 years, 13 years, you're going to have kicks you want back, and certainly that's one of them. But
of course.
I had a great career, and I guess you can't make them all.
Absolutely. 86.5%. And you and Peyton show up at the same time in 98. I find this kind of ironic. This all comes together. The Colts have been awful for 6-7 years, something in that range. You guys show up, have one bad season, and then flip the switch, 13-3. Edgerrin James wasn't there in 98. He was still at the U, and then he shows up. He's great, and you guys are suddenly one of the best teams in the NFL.
Well, you're right.
And you probably, I'm guessing, Mike, not to interrupt you, probably weren't really too concerned about all that since you're just trying to make an NFL team at that point.
Yeah, I certainly was. I had great seats for the Marvin, Peyton, Edgerrin show. There was the Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin threesome, and everybody talked about the Colts 3 that was the next big 3, and they certainly were. Obviously, when Edgerrin came in and ran for, I don't know what it was, he ran for 1,800 yards as a rookie and was just blazing. And obviously Marvin is a Hall of Famer, and Peyton, and I had good seats. But you're right. I when the offense is going down the field, I'm kicking into the net, making sure that I've hit the last one good, and I'm ready to make a field goal if it's time for a field goal. So as much as I watched the offense, I certainly wasn't just a fan. I was the guy who better make it if it's 4th down.
Mike, before we let you enjoy your holiday weekend here, we'd like to get everybody on board with your business venture here, which is really exciting and interesting. Slap It On. Tell us what that's all about.
Well, I don't like to use the F word, but Fathead was the company that gave me kind of the thought about doing vinyl decals. I wanted to do my son when he was in the 8th grade. So that's kind of where it started. And it has since grown into a technology marketing kind of company where you can scan our product with our app and video content comes up and you can change it in and out on a daily basis. It's real time. The funny thing is that I got the introduction from Nancy Kerrigan's husband. So I was in Mexico at a golf event and met him, and we had been talking since then. And he's like, "Hey, you need to talk to this technology company." So we turned a decal into a come to life kind of image on your phone or your laptop. Slap it on your phone, slap it on your laptop, slap it on your car, slap it on your wall. So it's really cool. We're just coming out with our website in the next week. We've got a lot of really good stuff coming, and hopefully you and I are going to be doing some stuff together too. So it's a very cool product. It's just on the cusp of everybody absolutely knowing what a Slap It On is.
That is phenomenal. And it's a great name. Did you come up with the name? Can you take credit for that?
I do, yes. And
Okay.
and a hand is the decal, is the logo. So the hand is the brand, Mark. So we want to make sure everybody knows. I always joke that you know what a swoosh is. You're going to know what the hand is. That if you see the hand, it's part of that Slap It On brand that Vanderjagt guy came up with.
Yeah, the marketing's huge, and if you can come up with a great name, and that's just a quick, catchy, bam, slap it on.
Absolutely.
Voice of College Football, I didn't come up with that. People told me that, and it took me like 100 people to tell me that before. Like my friends were like, "Why don't you use that?"
There you go.
Oh yeah, I guess that would sound good. Absolutely. Yeah, I'm not real bright.
No, that's okay. if you want to show it off, slap it on. That's how we roll. So it's
nice.
It's exciting stuff. Appreciate it.
Mike Vanderjagt, West Virginia, Colts, Cowboys, NFL great. Mike, we appreciate you stopping by. You have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Absolutely, Mark. Thanks, brother.
Yeah, fun time with Mike Vanderjagt. As soon as I found out I would have the opportunity to interview Mike, I was like, my goodness, Mike Vanderjagt, he's one of the greats of all time. He went forever without missing field goals. So I have told you guys on a regular basis that I love the NFL, love NFL history. So I don't have the time to keep up with it now. I just watch the games, enjoy the games, but I don't have it all logged in my brain like I used to in regards to stats and rosters. But back then, my goodness, yeah, Mike Vanderjagt. I've seen him make many kicks, as most of us have. All right, we're going to talk college football with you. We will open up the phone lines, which the phone lines have become a link because it has worked out much better in recent weeks to take us off the call-in system and go with a StreamYard link that I will leave right there in the comments section. We will get to your calls, and of course, I will answer questions and comments in the live chat as well. With so much going on concerning college football, please check out the videos we posted on Notre Dame, on the Pac-12, on the Oregon angle to all this concerning the Big Ten. We're going to have so much other content. You can't imagine all the angles and all the perspectives I'm going to take on this concerning the Big Ten. And of course, it's going to affect the ACC. It's already affecting the Pac-12 big time if there's ever going to be another Pac-12 when it comes to football and all the other conferences. So many angles. And if you've got a request of another video that you would like to see, and I'll just let you know that we're going to post a video in the morning that is going to be me sizing up all the Pac-12 contenders for Big Ten membership. That's Cal, that's Stanford, that's Washington, Oregon, Utah, Colorado, from a football perspective, a TV ratings perspective, an academics perspective, and to size that all up and to outline all the contenders. And so we're looking at those kind of videos, producing those in the next few days. So if you've got any requests, any requests overall, but specific to this expansion conversation, please let me know. Again, call-in shows Monday, noon Eastern time, Thursday at 6, Friday at 9, right here at the Voice of College Football. Please stop by. Let me leave the link there in the comments section. And we will take your calls. All right, let's get to the comments while we wait for our first call here. We've got Jersey Love 3. Serious question. Why do people hate on Oregon so much? Must be the flashy uniforms. I think your diehard old school football people think, wear a uniform. You got your home uniform, you got your away uniform, and Oregon was the first one to kind of push back and say, you know what, we're making a fashion statement. That's all I can come up with concerning Oregon football. Maybe a style of play would be another facet, because Oregon was one of the first, not the first, one of the first to slim down the linemen, get them out there in space, a lot of plays in space, and just a different brand of football as well. That's my shot. I don't necessarily recognize that myself, that other people hate Oregon more so than anybody else. Antoine here. Notre Dame will be blackballed from the league, meaning the Big Ten, I believe, if it doesn't join. Undoubtedly, I don't understand why Notre Dame thinks they have this power. The most leverage Notre Dame has is right now. Correct. Thank you, Antoine. I posted a video the other day, and you can get my thoughts on whether I believe Notre Dame should join the Big Ten and why. Brandon, Notre Dame plays an ACC schedule every year. They are just independent for TV contracts and for official league standing. They don't belong to the ACC. They can't win the ACC. So understand that. They cannot win the ACC. Notre Dame cannot win the ACC, so they are not an official member of the ACC. I get your point. And we got our first call of the night. We got Altro on the line. Altro, how's it going? Oh,
what's up, Mark?
DeAndre here. You fooled me with this, the name on your handle there.
Yeah, it's my name in Italian.
Very nice. How's it going, man?
Doing good, man. I had to get used to this new setup, man. But I'm grateful that you took my call.
Of course. How you doing?
Good. So the first thing I like to talk about, I'm not going to talk about conference realignment because that's all confusing to me right now. But I'd like to make some comments about North Carolina State and Clemson. I heard I'm not sure the guys from Florida State. They said they think that I don't think they said Clemson could win the first 6 games. They were going to lose to State. But why isn't anybody pointing out that NC State lost their 2 offensive tackles, 2 running backs, and leading receiver from last year? And also, Davis, Davis and Breezy didn't play the whole game. I don't know if we had a conversation about Pitt a couple weeks ago when I say Pitt had all these Clemson had all these penalties against Pitt, but somebody in the comments corrected me and said, "No, you're thinking about the North Carolina State game." So my question is, how do people come up that State is going to have this overwhelming advantage against Clemson, and they lost so many people on offense, and they struggled with Clemson losing 2 of their top players for that game on defense?
Here's my simple answer, DeAndre, that if you're watching a Clemson show or a North Carolina State show or reading something online from people that cover those teams specifically, most likely those people know what they're talking about. And if you're talking about, and I'm kind of going to take a knock on myself to a certain extent, not on me personally, but guys that do what I do, that cover everybody, they probably don't know all the things that you just talked about that I know about regarding NC State football, because I study my Athlons and my Lindy's, and I look online and I know who they lost and who's coming back and all that other sort of thing. Most people that cover national college football, because Clemson and Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia dominate, they're looking for who's going to be the chic team, the chic pick to knock them off. And it's NC State.
Right. Okay. Well, that's part of the question I want to talk about. Next thing, I sent you a tweet on direct message, and I was talking about the permanent people teams that people are going to play.
Yep.
So Clemson got State, Georgia Tech, Florida State, which y'all knew was coming. But what I have a problem with is Miami's. I could kind of understand Boston College because of Doug Flutie, and people think about that they had this long history. Florida State, of course, that's obviously going to happen. But my problem is Louisville. Louisville and Miami only played 6 times. The game should have been Virginia Tech and Miami, not Louisville should have got Wake Forest. I think Virginia Tech and Wake Forest are permanent games between each other. So that's what I was going to say about that. And also, Virginia and Georgia Tech should have been permanent rivals. They played 42 times and they split down the middle 21-21, and they have a history against each other. Um, you know, um, Another one I have an issue with is North Carolina State and Duke. It should have been North Carolina State and Wake Forest. I don't know if you know this, but Raleigh's in a county called Wake County, and Wake County is where Wake Forest used to be held at, and Wake and NC State used to be down the street from each other. And to Reynolds Bank came along and asked North Carolina State, Wake Forest to move to Winston-Salem. So they have a bigger rivalry. And I know people say that knows anything about North Carolina football, the area that Duke and NC State hasn't played 6 years. Even with if they played those 6 years, Wake Forest and NC State has played way more times than Duke and NC State has. So I thought those are the ones I had an issue with.
Okay, the only thing I asked, DeAndre, I don't disagree with any of that, but did you plug those teams into those spots to make sure that that would all work?
Well, I think the Louisville and Virginia Tech, I think you could switch Louisville and Wake Forest. And I think those will work. Virginia, Carolina, I understand because I emailed you. They're the oldest rivalry in the South, correct? Okay.
Quick time out, DeAndre. So you're going to flip flop Wake Forest that's got Virginia Tech, and you're going to flip that with Louisville's what?
Miami.
So Miami's going to be
Virginia Tech. They played, I think, 48 times.
Oh, okay. So Miami goes off of Louisville's, and they go on to Virginia Tech. Yep, I completely agree with that. And Virginia Tech loses Wake.
Yeah, and Wake Forest and Louisville will play each other.
I don't have any problem with that. That makes sense. I thought that Miami and Virginia Tech would be put together.
Right. So, yeah, so I was looking at that. Rest of them I really don't have an issue with, but that Louisville, Miami, that kind of sticks out. If anything, Florida State and Syracuse, I don't understand that one. It's not 1991, but you could have put Georgia Tech in Florida State. I think I even heard some of your Florida State contributors say that should have been what it was, and everybody has their right to their opinion, but I think that would have been better. I want to say two more things. So, how does the other schools get around this grant, lands of grant, whatever it's called, that the ACC is in? Because from what I understand of it, is that if ACC school leaves to go to another conference, they have media rights and they have the gate rights for a certain amount of time. So how would the other schools get around it?
Well, I think of it this way, DeAndre, that if you play in the ACC and you make $35 million a year on TV revenue, and you can go to the Big Ten and make $95 million revenue, that's a $60 million difference. That land of grants right pay, I don't know, I don't remember what the figure is, how much money a particular school needs to pay to get out of that, but it's not going to be nearly as significant. I think it's like $20 million, $25 million. So you're going to take the hit and then make so much more money per season.
Okay. Last thing. If I was the Big Ten, and I know you're going to disagree with me because this is a football show, I would go after Kansas and Colorado. The reason why I say Kansas, if you're going to have UCLA and Indiana in the Big Ten, if you lock up Kansas, you have a big Kansas and Duke. They say it can go independent in basketball and support their schools. Think how big that would be. I know football, Kansas wouldn't do anything, and I was saying Colorado because you get the Denver market. You already got the four biggest markets in the country: Chicago, New York, LA, and now you would add Denver, which is like top 10 market. So I would think that would be a way that they would look at it. I know it probably ain't going to happen because Colorado's terrible in sports, But I think that would look at it. I think that's a way that I would look at it going there. But Kansas and basketball, they get UCLA, Indiana, and Kansas every year. They
Well,
play.
and I understand it's the Denver market, but does anybody in Denver care about Colorado football? If they didn't have, it's different than Salt Lake City in Utah because there's no NFL team.
Right. Okay. Well, that was it, Mark. Man, I'm glad to see you. I'm trying to get used to this new call in because I was like, man, how do you call in? I was like, I saw everybody going yesterday, and I was like, man, I gotta look up into this, man. But hopefully see you soon, and I enjoyed the show. I hope
Thanks,
you do
DeAndre.
donations. And I
Thank you
didn't
so
know
much.
that was that Mike Vanderjagt. I remember that kick down. That was the
Oh yeah,
Bettis fumble, and Big B had to run him back down, run down on a
yeah.
Vanderjagt.
The Steelers were salting the game away, and then Jerome Bettis fumbles, and the ball got brought all the way back. And I forget who made the tackle, but
Ben,
they pretty much saved the game.
Big Ben, he ran backwards
It
and
was Big
tackled.
Ben.
Yeah,
And then everybody thought, shoot, Vanderjagt hadn't missed any kicks that year, that it was a done deal. And of course, the Colts were a huge favorite. They were like 14-0 to start the season that year.
right, yeah. And I think Pittsburgh went on to beat Denver and the Bengals. Well, they beat the Bengals the week before.
Yep.
Went on to win the Super Bowl. So man,
yeah. First team in league history to win 3 consecutive games on the road to get to the Super Bowl.
So when the Raiders did it, they didn't win 3 games in '82.
They only had to play 2 games in 1980. Oh no. No, they played the first game in Oakland against Houston. The Raiders were the first wild card team to win the Super Bowl, but they won against Houston at home, their first game before they went on the road to Cleveland and San Diego.
Yeah, I still don't remember that year. I think they ended up beating the Redskins, who were probably the best team that year in the league.
That team beat the Eagles.
That team beat the Eagles?
That was the 1980 team. You're thinking of the 83 Raiders.
Oh, okay.
Beat the Redskins with Marcus Allen.
Yeah, Marcus Allen got done dirty. But but I appreciate it, Mark, man.
Thanks, DeAndre.
All right.
Always good to see you, man. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. We will keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We got Luke coming on next. And I will let everybody know, since this is taking the place of a call-in show. Well, it's a call-in show, but for a number of reasons, I'm not going to go through them and waste our time right now. We have determined to go this route. But if you don't want to be on visually, you can knock your camera out and just eliminate your camera, and we'll still bring you onto the show. Got North Carolina fan Luke coming on here. Luke, how you doing?
I'm good, Mark. It's been a while.
I know it. What have you been up to?
Not much, really. Just seeing the state of college football going crazy.
Yeah, that's the deal right now.
Yeah, I do have something real quick to say about the grant of rights for the ACC.
Yep.
For any full member of the ACC, it's a ridiculous amount of money in the hundreds of millions to get out of it.
Hundreds of millions.
Yeah, that's what's kept Florida State in the conference. It's Florida State and Clemson. It's because it's running through 2036 as of now.
I knew I was lowballing it. I was just throwing out a number as a comparison, but I thought it was like maybe 40 million.
No, it's in the hundreds.
Good Lord. Then why are we talking about teams leaving the ACC, I guess? Because that's not going to happen.
There could be loopholes, but nobody really knows right now. You'd have to challenge it in a court and all that stuff. But if Notre Dame leaves, that could open up a way to challenge it, because the ACC teams agreed to the grant of rights with Notre Dame involved. And it's all complicated. Too complicated for me, at least.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that, but I have not, since things died down from last year, but we're back into expansion talk. So I will have to figure out what the deal is with North Carolina and Virginia and others who may be on the verge of leaving. Do you have anything else, Luke?
Yeah, I was wondering, where do you think schools like the ACC schools fit best. Like, it seems like Clemson, Florida State, and Miami are more SEC, and then North Carolina, Duke, and Virginia seem more destined for the Big Ten.
It does seem like that, doesn't it? Well, from a football standpoint, obviously the SEC is going to be most interested in the first three teams, and it also makes sense more geographically, although that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of difference these days. And of course, as you know, North Carolina and Virginia having the academic standards that they do would fit well with the Big Ten from that standpoint.
Yeah, I agree. It feels like Carolina's destined to the Big Ten. And I was commenting, it's going to be crazy when UCLA and North Carolina play for the Big Ten basketball championship.
How would you feel about North Carolina leaving the ACC, going to the Big Ten?
At this point, it feels like something you have to do because the ACC seems destined to fail. The only way it can survive is if Notre Dame joins as a full member, and even then it'd be kind of shaky, and I don't see that happening. So if we got out in front of it, I wouldn't be upset about it. I'd rather be in the SEC, but I won't be mad about the Big Ten.
Okay. All right, Luke. Appreciate you stopping by.
All right.
Have a good night. All right.
Hey, Mark.
Moving on to our next call here. We got Paxton on the line. Paxton, appreciate you being here.
Hey, what's up, Mark, buddy?
I am doing well. How's it going?
I'm really nervous. This is my first time calling into any show, even Uncle Lou or all them other shows. But
well, I'm glad you chose our show, at least. Paxton, who do you root for?
The Texas Longhorns.
Thanks.
I would just want to know your prediction on the Oklahoma Sooners and the Texas Longhorns predictions this year.
Their record predictions?
Yes, sir.
Season? Well, let's look at it here. Texas, I'm looking at Texas, knowing, of course, that they've got the typical Big 12 schedule and Alabama, that I'm looking at probably an 8-4 season for Texas. For Oklahoma, I'm looking more in the 9-3 range.
Yes, and I agree. And I actually have them backwards. I actually have Oklahoma, or not Oklahoma, Texas 9-3 and Oklahoma 8-4.
Okay. Well, you are a Texas fan.
Well, that's all I got to have. I'm not going to lie. I'm really nervous. I really look up to you, and
I appreciate that, Paxton.
I appreciate you took my call, buddy. I'll let you go.
Thank you, sir. Have a good night. Thanks for the call. Call back anytime. All right. That was Paxton on the line. As we get rolling here at the Voice of College Football, we appreciate everybody who's watched our recent live streams and videos concerning all this Big Ten expansion talk. And we've had some successful videos posted here recently. Check them out if you have yet to do so. Now we got Yakov on the line. Yakov, how you doing?
Hi, Mark. It's great to get to see you in person.
Absolutely. It's good to see you as well. How's it going?
Thank God. Well, I'm doing well here, Mark. You know, I live in Ohio, but I'm actually visiting in South Carolina right now. My parents they've lived down here for many years in the Myrtle Beach area, and here for extended period, but for the 4th of July as well.
Nice.
So,
you're having a good weekend. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank God. I work from home, so today I just kept working. My day wasn't that much different than it may have been in Ohio, other than a brief hour. Well, an hour walk along the beach.
Nice.
No beaches in Ohio, as you well know.
Yeah, you can't call anything up there near Lake Erie a beach. No.
Yeah, I guess there is some type of shoreline, I suppose, but not exactly a beach. And certainly, whatever type of beach there is non-existent in about 8 months a year. But anyway, Mark, again, very happy to be here. I don't want to just talk about expansion, but I did want to bring something up. My father and I were speaking about, actually, we often speak about you. That's one of our big topics. You'll never see him on here because he doesn't even have a YouTube account or a Gmail account. He just gets on. I think he just goes in the search bar, types Mark Rogers, and he watches your show often. But kind of
That's
a
very
silent
nice.
watcher, so he doesn't get. Maybe now that I'm down here, I could sign him up for Gmail so he could either comment or at least subscribe to your show, so it increases your analytics. But we were walking today, and we spoke to a neighbor of theirs, my parents, who's a Clemson alum, longtime, I think he's an alum from the early '70s, about my parents' age, and goes to a game or two every year, even though it's the other part of the state that's about 5-6 hours from Myrtle Beach. And we were speaking about the fact that Northwestern, Rutgers, Vanderbilt, maybe Illinois, their TV contracts dwarf Clemson's. And particularly with this new deal, they're going to be making $80 million more a year than Clemson does, $80 million a year than Florida State does. They already, even with the current one, I think they're making more than 2.5 times what Clemson does. And we kind of broke into the fact how, well, they remember better than me, obviously, these are two men in their 70s, but we were saying how much we like the regionalization of football, of college football, I should say. And I remember I still liked January 1st, 1986, whatever date it was more exciting to me than the current college football playoffs, unless it maybe includes Ohio State. But anything short of that, I loved college football postseason in that pre-even BCS area. I know we're not going back to that, but I'm just saying I love the regionalization of Big Ten plays the Pac-12, Pac-10 in those days, and the Sugar Bowls, the SEC, who gets whoever. That's not going to happen again. But we were saying how because of how there's probably 2 super conferences and 2 okay conferences, I guess you could say. But we just kind of came to the conclusion, and I said I was going to ask Mark Rogers about this, that this has to be, Mark, teams with brand names, be it earned or perceived, or be it from current performance, or perhaps like UCLA things of the past, they can't just make $30 million a year in the TV revenue. That's not sustainable. They need to get to a league that can get them $100+ million a year to really be competitive and pay their debts, and to be possibly to have some facilities, especially now that many alumni are giving money straight to players instead of those particular dollars going, whatever percent, I don't know that it is right now, but certainly some is going to players instead of to the college, right to the universities. And I think this there's no fault here. It has to be this way, Mark. Teams that have a brand name need to jump into big leagues. In this case, it's probably just 2. And teams that either don't have a big brand name, even if they're really competitive, even if they're doing really well, let's say Wake Forest, I think they run a terrific program, but just don't have the facilities or the brand name to be significant, to increase the television contract. So I think I came to the conclusion, Mark. I'm sorry, I think I felt like I'm rambling here, but I think what I'm trying to say here, Mark, is that see what you have to say about this. Is there's no choice. College football has to go this method.
Yeah, when you bring up wanting to go back to 1985, I was actually in the process before all this broke with USC and UCLA, and it's a complete project of vain of a vain nature. But I certainly think that if we had 4 or 5 conferences, if we were able to maintain 4 or 5 conferences, and we still had the bowl tie-ins as we did and still do, we could maintain the importance of the bowl games, the major bowl games, not every bowl game, but the major bowl games. If we had a playoff or a championship game, a +1 that was contingent on the New Year's Day bowl games. So if you played a +1 or a 14 playoff, either one, after the bowl games, so you still had a New Year's Day format of the Pac-12 and the Big Ten in the Rose Bowl, and the SEC champion goes to the Sugar Bowl, and the Orange Bowl hosts the ACC winner, and the Big 12 goes to the Fiesta, and then you filled out the other slots with the top 12 teams in the country for those 6 New Year's Day bowl games and played those. Well, then they would then matter because they would count toward exclusion or inclusion into the playoffs, the 14 playoff or a championship game. And that way we could maintain the sanctity and the interest in the bowl games, the major bowl games, because they would be producing the playoff. And then we would still have a playoff. But that's all null and void because of what's going on between the Big Ten and the SEC right now.
So, do you see a way for teams with a brand name to? Mark, how could Clemson? I'm here at South Carolina now. How can Clemson stay pat on $30 million a year when Vanderbilt and Northwestern make 110, maybe $120 million a year TV contracts?
Yeah, they can't. Unfortunately, what's probably going to happen is if the SEC and the Big Ten continue to counterpunch, they're going to arrive at a place, whether that's 20 teams or 24 or 32, whatever. I hope if it's going to go that direction, I would love it to be 32 because that's 64 teams. And that pretty much ensures within a couple programs, it ensures that everybody that currently is in the Power Five is going to stay in the Power Five.
Right.
But that's most likely not going to happen. If they continue to counterpunch, both of them are going to come to a place where, let's say they've got 28 or 24, and they look at the next few options and say, those schools and those programs don't add enough value for us to add them. So we're done with 24 or 28 or whatever the number is, and those schools are going to be left on the outside.
That may include a large number of current Power 5 schools.
Yeah, and Wake Forest is a great example. To your point, they're running a great football program. They're doing a tremendous job running a football program for a student body of like 7,000.
Yeah, my high school had 2,000 people.
Yeah,
weren't that much smaller. Okay, well, I think you sort of came to the similar conclusion as our little brain trust on walking through the streets from Myrtle Beach came through a couple hours ago today.
Well, sounds like I'm in good company at least.
Yeah, we can't find a way out of this, Mark. It seems like it's the way to go. And one last thing I'll ask you, Mark, is another thing I maybe someone's brought this up, but I think that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to probably make power play in regards to the playoffs. That they're going to set the playoff up in a way that either the ACC and the Pac-12, Big 12 are going to agree to, or they're going to go to a playoff between the two leagues. The SEC and the Big Ten are going to say, we're making our own playoff, the winner of which will be the national champion. The NCAA, if that even exists anymore, I don't know, but doesn't have to say in those things anyway. But we came to the conclusion, our little group today, that either the other two leagues could be 90% those two leagues deciding what the new playoff structure will be, or and if the other leagues don't almost totally agree with that, they're not going to be participating in the playoffs. Maybe they'll have to make their own little playoff, and SEC and Big Ten will determine the national championship between their respective leagues.
What could turn this into an interesting scenario and possible stalemate of sorts would be if the Big Ten gets whatever it needs or wants out of the Pac-12, whether that's another 2 or 4, whatever it is.
Right.
And then they direct their attention toward the ACC, and the SEC does the same thing. Let's say they pick off Clemson and Florida State or Miami, some semblance of those 4, maybe Georgia Tech. And the Big 12's sitting here, and if neither the Big Ten nor the SEC deem those Big 12 programs to be that much of a valued commodity, and the Big 12 has this pretty substantial league in terms of quantity of teams. They've got 14 teams. Yeah. And if they pick off, let's say, Arizona State and have a 16-team league, maybe even Utah and Colorado, they could have an 18-team league.
That's a nice football league.
That the SEC, it is. It's a very nice football league. I know everybody's hyper-focused on the elite and the college football playoff, but the Big 12, the way it stands right now, I think is a very competitive, interesting league.
I was going to watch, right after the big noon game, I'm going to watch a Big 12 game. And I really am interested in that conference.
It's like, out of those 14, well, it's going to be 12. It's like 8 or 9 deep of very competitive teams. So my point being that if the SEC and the Big Ten snatch who they want, and they're going to be the upper echelon, they're going to be the Florida States and Miamis, and they're sitting here with like 20 or 22 teams, and then the Big 12 has, let's say, 18, but it's substantially inferior, but it's still 22 or 18 solid, decent top 30 to 40, 50 teams in the country. What would a playoff system look like?
Right. Well, you know, I do recall that when the current negotiations fell apart, the Big 12 was not the cause of that. So they may be more than happy to accommodate and say, hey, whatever, you know, whatever SEC, Big 12, whatever you guys come up with, we're in too. Just don't leave us out. We'll whatever you guys say, we're good with. So I think they probably would maybe not make it because of quality, but they certainly wouldn't make it because of exclusion as a result of an agreement.
Maybe they play a 12-team playoff, and most of those teams come from the SEC and the Big 10, but the Big 12 gets its champion in, and maybe one other team, possibly. And it becomes this kind of strange 2 super conferences and 1 okay conference that gets a seat at the table.
We've strayed a long way from when I watched New Year's Day football in the 1980s in my grandparents' basement. And, you know, we used to always go to their house, and my grandpa had this huge TV that the TV was only like that big, but they had like this huge wood complex and then they put a little black and white TV on top. That was football. Can't go back to that, but nevertheless, I guess we're going to deal with this.
And of course, Yakov, we would go to bed on New Year's night not knowing who won the national championship. You'd have to wait until you'd have a good guess at it, but you'd have to wake up the next morning and look at the newspaper and see who was voted the national champion.
Mark, I still remember we went, much to my chagrin, although I enjoyed the cruise, we went on a cruise, Dolphin, whatever, a cruise in, I guess it was in 1989. And we came back, we landed at the Canton airport, and then we came back to our house like at 1 a.m. And I didn't know who won that Colorado Notre Dame game, the one where there was a call back on the Rocket Man ran it back. I didn't know what happened until next morning. I remember, we were listening to the radio in the car, and they would only repeat the sports every 20 minutes or something. By the time we got home, we just missed a cycle. So I didn't know who won until the next day. There was no ESPN was probably showing Australian rules football or something. There was nothing to turn on. And I didn't know who won. They were talking about who won the championship the next day. I didn't know who won that game until I got up late the next morning, like at 9 or 10 o'clock. And my dad had already watched the news. So Colorado won. I saw the highlights probably 6 p.m. on the ESPN or something like that. But this is modern football, and hey, at least for your show, Mark, we can't say it's been a non-eventful, boring offseason where we're coming up with who are the best running backs of the 1980s or something like that. You don't need to get to that show. You can you kept that list of what to do if there's nothing, but I think you can wait till next summer for if that.
Maybe.
Maybe next summer we'll be doing this with whoever else. So we can talk about the best running backs in the 1980s. I don't know, maybe in 2028 or something.
There you go, Yakov. Well, I appreciate you being here.
We got to meet face to face finally, and I'm looking
forward
to and you'll see me hopefully super chat in on the next Buckeye show, whenever that is, Wednesday or Thursday.
Sounds good. We'll take
Have
it.
a good night, Mark.
All right, Yakov. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you.
All right, welcome into the Voice of College Football. A few reminders here. Of course, when you shop Amazon, use the link that we provide in the description section. So go to the description section of any of the videos and grab the link and shop Amazon, please. Also, keep in mind, this is part of our summer festival here at the Voice of College Football. Yes, we have call-in shows slated each and every week for Monday at noon Eastern Time, Thursday at 6, Friday at 9. This is a special edition. Hope you enjoyed the conversation with former NFL great Mike Vanderjagt. And if you missed it, you can head on back and check it out when the video posts. All right, on to our next caller here at the Voice of College Football. We got the real MVP on the line.
Hey, Mark, how you doing?
I'm good. What's going on?
So we've been talking a lot about the move with UCLA and USC to the Big Ten, but I want to talk about the teams and how they are going to do in the Big Ten. So do you think this increases the odds USC wins a title?
That's a great question. And the real MVP, of course, you're full of great questions. You usually give me something to think about because on one hand, they're raising the level of play on the schedule, of course, immensely. So it's going to be more difficult for them to win. But if we're headed toward whether that be an 18 playoff or certainly a 12-team playoff, they're going to be given a lot more leeway and a lot more respect is going to be given to a USC team in the Big Ten than a USC team in the Pac-12. So I am going to say I still think the competitiveness of the schedule is going to be more difficult than trying to go 11-1 and 12-1 with a championship game win in the Pac-12. So I'm going to say it's more difficult against a 9-game schedule that you've got to think you don't have to play all the tough teams, but most of them, Ohio State, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Purdue, Iowa. It's a tough deal to get through. You probably most seasons, if you're USC, are going to have to play, what did I name? 7. You're going to have to play 5 of them.
Okay. The next thing, Mark, I want you to rank these teams I'm going to list in order from least successful to most successful over the next
second.
Huh?
Right
Yes.
this second, how successful I expect them to be this season?
Next 5-10 years.
Okay.
Okay. And I think you'll understand where I'm going with this after I list the first few teams.
Yep.
UCF,
Yep.
Cincinnati, BYU, Oklahoma, Texas, UCLA, USC, and Houston.
Okay. So we got the 4 teams from the Big 12 that just entered. Then we got USC and UCLA. And who else?
Texas and Oklahoma.
Okay. All the expansion teams. All right. Success in the next
5 to 10 years.
years is going to go. Well, I got to consider the conference. Well, I'm not going to consider the conference. I'm just going to list them based. This is tough. I'm going to go based on how good I think they're going to be, even if they're playing in a better conference. So here's my list. USC 1, Oklahoma 2, Texas 3, UCF 4, BYU 5, Cincinnati 6, UCLA 7, Houston 8.
Okay, that there's some surprising. So why Houston as the least successful? Because I can make an argument that they're going to be in a hotbed of recruiting in the Big 12. There are going to be the best group of 5 team going forward. So why would they be the least successful?
Well, if the SEC and the Big Ten continue to counterpunch and gobble up a bunch of programs, the Big 12 is going to have some kind of status that's going to be similar to what the American Conference currently has. So I don't know that Houston's going to be able to capitalize from that recruiting if it's viewed similar to the way it's been viewed for the last 25 years.
Okay, that's a good point. And my next question, Mark, is what happens first? Notre Dame wins an NY6 bowl game or they join the conference?
I sure hope it's join a conference. Wow, that's a great question. Man, I would love to know what's being talked about in those Notre Dame high-end meetings right now about whether to join the Big Ten. Because obviously they could join the Big Ten any day.
They could.
And if they don't join the Big Ten, they may be. I've got to think that if they're not joining the Big Ten, then they're holding out for the SEC. I cannot imagine that they're going to join the ACC, knowing that the ACC's vulnerable. Versus winning a New Year's Six bowl game whenever. I'm going to say that Notre Dame is going to join a conference first.
Wow. Now, do you believe that's because of how soon they're going to join a conference, or do you believe that's because how bad Notre Dame's been in it New Year's Six bowl game? Because
I think they're going to be forced to join a conference in the next I hope in the next 6 months, but in the next 3 to 4 years.
Okay. And would Marcus Freeman be the coach that delivers the New Year's Six bowl win?
Yes.
Okay. Well, next question is, when do you plan on doing your predictions with all this breaking news for this
Prediction
season?
for the 22 season?
Yes.
Well, I got to tell you, I've formed a nice little list of topics to attack concerning all this expansion, and I'm going to post a video first thing in the morning. It's about halfway done, where I'm lining up all these Pac-12 candidates for the Big Ten, and I'm going to do a lot of videos like that. I got to capitalize on that. People like to watch these videos. My goodness.
I know you've been going off. You just passed 35,000 subscribers, so congrats. And if you're not subscribed, you can subscribe by hitting the subscribe button below.
Yeah, my subscribers had been like crawling in here for the last couple months, and then all of a sudden I jumped about, I don't know how many here in the last 2 days. Plus people are watching these videos. So I got to squeeze this dry when it comes to all the different angles. You know, how can UCLA fare in the Big Ten? How can USC fare in the Big Ten? All those sorts of things. So predictions, yeah, I don't have an answer for that, because the YouTube, the way to honor YouTube and try to get the most views is to get the predictions out there as soon as possible so that they sit there all summer. But I don't always do the smart thing. I just typically do what I want.
There was the rumor I saw where Utah, 2 Arizona schools, and I can't remember the other school, was thinking about joining the Big 12. Have you heard about that?
And it was in Colorado?
Oh, it might have been Colorado. I couldn't remember the fourth school.
Yeah, if I'm the Big 12, you know what I do first? I go after Oregon and Washington, and I know they've got their heart set on the Big 10, but I would make a pitch for them. We will treat you like kings. The Big 10 is putting you on hold. They're treating you like a second-class citizen waiting for Notre Dame. I would go after Oregon and Washington, and then some semblance of the other 4, maybe all of them. But my priority would be Oregon 1, Washington 2, Utah 3. Before about 6 months ago, it would have been Arizona State would have been higher. I guess I'll keep them there, and then Colorado and Arizona last. But yeah, I think that's natural for the Big 12 to go after those 6, especially Utah and Colorado. Utah would be a great addition for the Big 12. It would be arguable that would be the near elite potential that they would need, and Colorado just left them 10 years ago.
So the final thing I'll say, Mark, is when you do you know how to pin a YouTube comment?
I do.
Okay, pin the link to the StreamYard to a comment that you put in there, so that way you don't have to keep reposting it.
Yeah, but the comments aren't going to go into the video yet.
No, so like if you post the StreamYard link and then you pin that comment, anytime anybody goes into this video from now on.
Oh, I don't know how to pin a comment. I thought you meant to a video.
No. I meant to the chat.
Oh, no, I don't. I guess I could try to figure it out here.
Or you just put in the description. That way people stop having to ask, or they might pop in, want to say something, but don't.
How do I pin that?
Well, I know there is a way to do it. I see it on live shows all the time. So that's all I got for you, Mark.
All right, the real MVP. I appreciate you being here.
No problem.
It is the heart, the center, the core of our summer festival here at the Voice of College Football, July 4th, Independence Day weekend. We hope that you're celebrating our fine country that's turning, let me do the math, 224 plus 22, 246 years old. Will be 250 in 2026. Let's see if I can add this link. How would I pin that? I don't see any options to. Oh, yes, maybe. Let's see. No? All right, J-Dub, I just posted the link. It's right there. So appreciate everybody being here. So I posted a video this morning on the way I would structure the Big Ten with Washington and Oregon. And I appreciate everybody watching this video. We've got a nice response to the video. There were some people, of course, as usual, that made a lot of comments that they didn't necessarily think through. One is people were upset with me separating Ohio State and Michigan into different divisions, saying the Big Ten would never do that. How would they ever separate Ohio State and Michigan into separate divisions? They would never do that. That's exactly what the Big Ten did in 2011 when they split the conference into divisions. They separated Ohio State and Michigan. That doesn't mean that they can't play. Indiana and Purdue are in different divisions right now. The Big Ten protects the game, and the old Oak and Bucket, Indiana and Purdue, play every year. Same thing with Ohio State and Michigan. They don't have to be in the same division to play every year. All right. Let's take our next call. Coming in from J-Dub. How's it going, sir?
Oh, just wonderful. Mark, I appreciate all you're doing. Hey, everybody. Thumbs up time, people. First thing, you come into the chat, you see Mark's live, you hit the thumbs up before you even make your first comment. Do it. Mark, I've seen several comments. I'm not going to call the guy out, but I've spent 10 minutes reading this guy trashing Stanford, saying Stanford doesn't add anything to the Big Ten. Let me tell you about Stanford. You can Google this if you don't believe me. Stanford has almost 700. I'll say that again. Almost 700 NCAA national championships in combined men, women, team, and individual titles. So like an individual title being like the 200 butterfly in women's swimming, whatever. You total number of NCAA championships you can win. Stanford has 670, more than 100 more than second place USC. They are the runaway national championship school. They have an academic endowment of over $30 billion with a B dollars. That's what they bring to the Big Ten. You may say, well, Stanford's not winning the Rose Bowl anytime soon, so they don't bring anything. Oh, yeah, I think I just mentioned what they bring. But I wanted to get to the Big 12, and DeReal MVP had some comments there. I wanted to add on to what you said to his. I would agree with you. I think the Big 12 should throw the red carpet out to Oregon and Washington. Why not say, as you did, come be our studs, rather than be the ugly stepchild that the Big Ten is treating you like?
That's how I look at it as well. And that Stanford rundown by you is exactly what I'm looking at right now. And again, I'm going to post a video in the morning, and some of the things that you're highlighting about Stanford is what I'm looking at as well. And it's only been 7 or 8 years since Stanford was a top 10 or 15 team in the country for a span of 7 or 8 years. Now, we don't expect them, based on their history, to stay some kind of football elite, but they do bring a ton on the athletic side with all the Olympic sports. And then on top of that, like you said, the Big Ten takes academics seriously, and they value that. So they would drop down their football requirements to grab a Stanford, I believe, over somebody who's a little bit better on the football field, but doesn't bring that kind of prestige academically and money. The money, I looked up the endowments as well, and they just completely blow everybody away.
Well, and speaking of endowments, I believe I saw somewhere, and I don't want to go on. I don't want to go on the record because I'm not sure this is the right number. but I believe I saw that Notre Dame is approaching 20 billion in an endowment. So you say, well, why aren't they hurrying to get into the Big Ten? They can make $80 to $100 million a year on their football contract. Okay, so that means in a decade they would make $1 billion. Their endowment is almost 20 billion. The football money is insane, but it's nothing compared to the academic endowments of the Big Ten schools. And that, if you don't think that doesn't matter when these chancellors and these presidents get together, I got news for you. The chancellors and the presidents are looking at different things than Jim Bob, who's got his season tickets in Section 25. He's worried about the football team. The chancellors and the presidents have got different priorities.
So, J-Dub, there's a lot of people commenting right now that it doesn't matter about endowments and research grants and all those other things. I'm no expert on this topic. So I want to be here talking about, the Michigan-Wisconsin game in October. You know what I want to be talking about and what typically the conversation is. So I don't claim to be an expert about any of this. But yes, we are talking about boards of directors, and we were talking about administrators getting together, talking about including, and once you join a conference, yes, it is about athletic competition, but those schools within the conference are connected, and they connect through a network just like the sports teams. And that's one of the reasons why some have not met the Big Ten cut and others have, and that they reviewed Nebraska and their AAU status and all of that. I do think it matters.
Yeah, I don't want to come across as being this hoity-toity academic endowment guy and that I don't care about the college football. Of course I care about the college football. My God, I'm a Bama grad. Caring about college football is my blood. I mean, it very much matters to me. All I'm trying to say is that you can't overlook these other factors. It's not all 100% football.
Yes.
When these votes are taken. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm trying to say. But back to the Big 12, I think their smart move is to try to get Oregon and Washington, tell Utah, come in, reignite the holy war with BYU. And then I think the other sell is Colorado. You just pick up the phone and you call Boulder and say, you should have never left, come back home.
Yeah. I'm right there with you. Absolutely.
I think the Big 12, they're not going to be where the Big 10 and the SEC are going. I don't think they can do that, but they can keep themselves from being irrelevant. They can make themselves a player and a force that matters if they can pick up like the combination we're saying there. I think inactivity right now might be the most dangerous thing these conferences can do. They might just have to, it's kind of turned into a shooting gallery. You don't want to get caught with being, well, I didn't pull the trigger. You might not want to be that guy. I was a little hesitant to pull the trigger.
At the very best, if the Big 12 gets Oregon, Washington, and Utah, then they're in great shape. But let's say the Big 10 gets Notre Dame and then they pick off one of the other ones, and let's say they only get two of them, or any of those are going to fortify and stabilize the league. And then, we may arrive at a place where the Big 10 has gobbled up, half of the ACC, and the SEC took the other half, or probably a third, and then a third have to go off and play Group of Five football. And we arrive at this place where we got the SEC's mighty and the Big 10's mighty and the Big 12's okay. And maybe they at least can forge a place where our champion can make the college football playoff. And sure, we got a 12-team playoff, and most of it's going to be like 5 Big 10 schools and 5 SEC schools, and our champion and maybe our second place team gets in, and we only get 2 out of the 12, but because we're considered inferior, but we play pretty good football, and at least we get our champion in there.
Right. I think they've got to try to make sure that they stay in the conversation and not get thrown out to the curb.
For sure.
Everybody, again, thumbs up for Mark. Thanks for taking the call, Mark. I'll drop into the comment section. And everybody, armed citizens brought you your holiday. Happy birthday, America. Enjoy your Independence Day. Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, J-Dub. Appreciate it. J-Dub speaks a lot of truth there, and we appreciate you saluting the veterans there and our independence. So whatever you think of America these days and so forth, just understand that it's a young country, and people still want to be here. That's all I'm going to say about that right now. We got Hunter on the line. Welcome into the Voice of College Football, Hunter.
How's it going? Good. How are you?
I am doing just fine. What's going on?
Well, I want to get into some actual football talk here.
Sure. I'll take it.
I'm looking at the first week of the season. We got some really big games the first week of this season. So I'm not going to ask you for any predictions, but what do you think the keys to the game are for the Notre Dame Ohio State game? I think that's going to be that's going to be week one. That's going to be, I think, the one I'm most excited to see.
All right. Biggest key of this game is new Ohio State defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, who has never coached a game, never been able to implement his defense in live action, getting his team, his defense prepared and in the right spots and knowledgeable enough to play his defense against a quality team with no preseason games. That, I think, is a challenge. So I think that's the number one key to the game. Tyler Buchner being the Notre Dame quarterback who got hurt and missed the end of spring practice for Notre Dame, but he should be ready to go, sprained his ankle. He would be the second key because I'm pretty confident what Ohio State brings on offense. I think that's one of the most sure things in college football. So it's about the entire Ohio State defense. I think a key inside that key is that Tanner McAllister, who was second team All Big 12 the last 2 years, comes over as a safety and played 42 games in that defense with Jim Knowles. And he is somewhat of a coach on the field, can teach the other players how to play the defense and what to look for. And I think that's a big advantage, or a accelerator of the learning process for the rest of the defense. And, Notre Dame's physically capable of beating Ohio State. But how well is Tyler Buchner going to play against? And I want to see this Ohio State defensive line that's loaded with 5 stars, 3 5-stars. The 2 that just were freshmen last year, probably a bit unrealistic to expect too much from them, but they might be able to cut loose and really have tremendous sophomore seasons. JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer.
Yeah, Tuimoloau, Alabama really tried to recruit him, and he ended up, going to Ohio State. So that was a little bit of a disappointment from an Alabama fan's perspective. But there are a lot of good games this season, just marquee matchups this year. Another game that I think is going to be, I think it's week 3, is Auburn versus Penn State. And that was a good game last year, and I think it'll be a really good game this year.
Yeah, it was a great game last year. Auburn could have easily won on the road. To me, Penn State is one of the more intriguing teams in the country. They had a top 5 defense in terms of talent last year. They didn't always play to that level, and they got injured. They had a horrendous running game, an awful running game, one of the 5 or 10 worst running games in college football. Of course, they can't compete in the Big Ten until they drastically improve the run game. And, of course, Auburn, Brian Harsin, this is a huge game for him. He's going to have 2 wins in his pocket at this point since they play, I believe, Akron and Alabama State. And this is going to be the first big test coming off an off season that was probably the most tumultuous in college football.
Yeah, I think this is a big game for Harsin. I think he has to win this game to win over the fan base, to get some respect. Because because I know a lot of Auburn fans that are still very cautiously optimistic about Brian Harsin after that first season. So we'll have to see how that goes. Now, not this year, Mark, but because I mean, Texas is just new with Sarkisian, but I think it'll be. I think the game will be hyped up, but I don't think it'll be much of a game when it comes to Alabama versus Texas this year. But next year, I think it could be game that's going to be played at Bama will be a lot more competitive next year than it will be this year.
Yeah, you would think so. For the main two reasons would be for me, Quinn Ewers, regardless of how talented he is of course going to be playing his first major opponent and only his second game against Alabama. That is a tough ask.
And our defense, I think, is going to be the best since Kirby Smart left. I know I love Alabama fans been saying that for the last few years, but I really do believe that this is how it's going to be this year.
I do too. And I think the second point would be that the Texas offensive line has been a train wreck, but they had a tremendous 2022 recruiting class at offensive line and an even better so far 23 class, which of course you can't expect those freshmen to be ready to play Alabama in week 2 of 2023, but the 2022 class could turn out to be really stellar from an offensive line standpoint, because that's been the worst unit on the field for Texas during this dry spell.
Yeah, and the last game I want to discuss for a second is I think this will be a bigger game than people might actually think it will be. Right when you say the two schools, but Utah and Florida, I think it's going to be a really good game. I think I like Utah in this game. I like Kyle Whittingham and what he's done at Utah. And so I think they can compete against Florida.
Yeah, the preseason line on that is basically a toss-up, I believe. They're playing in the Swamp, of course, and Anthony Richardson is now the starting quarterback there. Cameron Rising led Utah to the Rose Bowl, and they did not – I think they lost one game with him as the starting quarterback after he took over and, of course, won the Pac-12 championship. So, yeah, I think that's a fascinating game, and I believe for the Pac-12 to try to gather some level of momentum and some national talk and some relevance outside of Oregon pulling off an upset that I don't expect against Georgia. It would be Utah winning this game, and then Florida turning into a decent 8-4 season in the SEC would help the Pac-12 out tremendously.
And I'm not saying that Utah is going to win the game. I think that they will be competitive. I think it'll be pretty much a one-possession football game.
Oh, I do too. And if somebody was going to force me to make a prediction now, I would actually take Utah.
Yeah, Utah is really good. I have a friend of mine that lives in Salt Lake City, and actually his father worked at the University of Utah for 30 years. He just retired. And he knows Kyle Whittingham personally. And he said that the things that he's doing up there he's doing in the right way, and he's trying to recruit out of California a lot, but now I think it's going to be a little bit harder with Lincoln Riley at USC, and quite frankly, I think UCLA is probably one of the most intriguing teams going in this year as well. I think last year they had a really good start to that season. And they should be one of the teams to keep an eye out on.
They are. They've got a lot of production back. They're one of the more experienced teams coming back in college football. They went 8-4 last year. The only troubling thing is they generally beat all the bad teams they played, and they lost to all the decent teams, good teams that they played. What could have been the exception was they should have beaten Oregon. They had Oregon beaten and let them off the hook, and that would have been a big win for them at the Rose Bowl last year.
And they beat LSU.
With the LSU. Yeah, but LSU wasn't too good. But, yeah, that was a UCLA last year, but did not beat any winning team.
Is Tomlinson still there? The quarterback?
Robinson? Yes.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, he's back.
Okay, he's back. Yeah, with him being back, that's a big crucial point. I think he's a real good quarterback. I don't know if he's going to be a draftable quarterback, but I think he's a decent college starting.
Yeah, he is.
And so, like, we got a lot to look forward to this year. I'm more, of course, I'm a big Alabama fan, but I'm a fan of the sport, and I like watching all these games. And I think the cool thing about this year is we get a lot of non-neutral site games. And so the last thing that I'll add here is, with all this conference talk and moving around the conference, I've always had the idea of us giving Kentucky to the ACC and letting Florida State join the SEC.
Okay.
I would take that.
How do you expect those negotiations to go? You call up what's his name? Jim Phillips of the ACC, and you say, we're going to give you Kentucky and we'll take Florida State.
That would never happen, but I would like.
You always like to call about Florida State, Hunter. You like talking about Florida State.
They're my second favorite team.
Okay.
I went to high school in Florida, and all my friends were Florida State fans, and I've been to a lot of Florida State games. So they become my second favorite football team, and I'd like to see them in the SEC. I mean, it would be fun to have them in the SEC as well. But the way I look at it is, Kentucky's a good basketball school, and you give them to the ACC, which is a really good basketball conference. So we'll see.
Well, if things don't change, Hunter, I'd rather have Kentucky in both sports.
Yeah, they're doing pretty well. They're one of the teams that I think could be decent this year. We're just still looking for that one team in the East Division to beat Georgia.
Yes.
Could it be Florida?
By the way, Hunter, if you're really intrigued to see that Ohio State Notre Dame game in week 1, that may not be the best game to watch. According to Christopher in the live chat, here, he predicts Notre Dame's going to win 35-0.
35-0. I don't see that happening. But I like Notre Dame. I like. I'm not. I don't. From what I've heard, everybody likes the new head football coach there. I don't know too much about the guy, but everybody that has talked about him has had good things to say about him. So, yeah, Notre Dame really does need to join a conference. I agree with that 100%. I think that they I don't know. You said they would probably never join the ACC.
I said that.
Did you say that, or did I mishear you?
So basically, my stance on Notre Dame and the ACC is that ever since they agreed to play football against the ACC and joined in all the other sports, I just figured, based on everything I had read about what their agreement was with the ACC and how much that tied them to the ACC, that if they were going to join anybody in football, that was going to be their choice to join the ACC because of obvious reasons. They've already joined in something like 14 other sports, as it were. And again, they have financial obligations written into the contract that basically says if they're going to join a conference, they're going to join the ACC in football. However, now with all this instability and the Big Ten making the plays that it's making versus the SEC and the ACC not being as potentially stable, that Notre Dame may want to opt to, in my opinion, they should join the Big Ten.
Okay, yeah, and one more question. I don't know the answer to this question, so I'll give it to you. Where are they going to put Texas and Oklahoma in the divisions in the SEC? Are they going to put Texas in the West and Oklahoma in the East?
Well, they're going to have 16 teams, and the talk is about, so the original talk was about having 4-team pods, but that got shot down, I believe. I remember hearing that coming out of the coaches' meetings in Destin, that the pods were shot down. So, yeah, that's going to be a bit difficult because they don't want to. I believe that they would want to have Oklahoma and Texas in the same division. And of course, they're coming from the same part of the country. Now, Missouri's in the East already. So you would think that possibly they would want to reconfigure the whole deal now that they've got the opportunity and put Missouri where they should be and Oklahoma and Texas. So you would have what? If you had 8-team divisions, you could have Missouri, Oklahoma, Texas, A&M is 4, Arkansas 5, LSU 6, Ole Miss and Mississippi State is 8, and throw the other 8 in the East.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how all that's going to shake out. How they're going to do that. Yeah, I think it makes sense to put Texas in the West. Just because geographically, but we'll have to see how all that'll shake out. We'll just have to see.
All right, Hunter.
All right, thank you, Mark. I appreciate you taking my call.
Absolutely. Have
Talk
a
to you
good
later.
night. Now, as is being stated by Mr. Sports Kings 5, aren't divisions a thing of the past if they are doing the top 2 championship anyway? So for the ACC, yes, divisions are a thing of the past. Starting in 2023, the ACC has banished divisions. Now, the Pac-12, it was a big talking point just a few weeks ago that the Pac-12 was the first ahead of the curve. I, for one, was applauding the Pac-12 for getting out in front of the rest of college football to banish the divisions and go to a 1 versus 2 seeding championship game. However, here we are 1 or 2 weeks later, and as it is with life in the Pac-12, they can never stay on top for long. And as soon as they get ahead of the curve and make a bold move and try to present some leadership and some original thought, their conference is crumbling. So are divisions a thing of the past? Possibly. All the conferences are looking at banishing the divisions, abolishing the divisions, and going with a 1 versus 2 championship game. So it's possible, but the larger the conferences get, the more they're going to have to go to an NFL-style division structure / postseason, similar to the one that I presented on the video I posted this morning. Because if you think about it, when you get so far away from having most of the teams in your conference not even be able to play the other teams in the conference, then you have to come up with a formula way to determine some kind of playoff structure within the conference, if that makes sense. See, right now, with divisions, everyone in the division plays each other, so you have an automatic 1 seed. You don't have to break any ties. If there's a tie at the top of any division in college football right now, well, those 2 teams automatically played. So you have your tiebreaker, you're done. Or if you have a 3-way tie, then still everything was decided on the field. And you have a division winner that advances to the conference championship game. But the more teams you have, the more games you're going to have not played between the teams that could create ties between teams that didn't play. So what do you do with that? It's not fair to go to some kind of point system to say, well, their aggregate points scored for the season is plus 108 and theirs is only plus 59. Therefore, they go to the SEC championship game or SEC semifinal. I don't want to see something like that. And so I try to create in the Big Ten something that would be able to break ties logically based on the field play, and then create a semifinal system within the Big Ten to produce the champion. Yes, Edward, always on the field, unlike what we've got for a college football playoff selection committee. Vernon, the question, who contacted whom first? Did the Pac-12 reach out to the Big Call first, or was it the Big 12? Do you mean the Big 10? USC and UCLA contacted the Big 10. Just like it's reported Oklahoma and Texas contacted the SEC. Now, Oregon and Washington have applied for membership, apparently, to the Big 10. As I stated to one of the callers, I know it's not going to happen now, but just think about how much it makes sense to have a bowl system that is similar to what we have right now and have had for a zillion years, where you have conference tie-ins to the bowl games. The Big 10 and the Pac-12 champions go to the Rose Bowl. The SEC champion goes to the Sugar Bowl. The Big 12 winner goes to the Fiesta, and the ACC winner goes to the Orange. Therefore, you've got 5 of the 12 New Year's 6 bowl slots filled by conference champions. And then you just take I would do it differently, but this is the easiest way to explain it. You take the other 7 top-ranked teams in the country. So you fill the New Year's 6 bowl games with the top 12 teams in the country. 5 of them are conference champions. Then you play on New Year's Day or in 2. I don't want 6 games in one day myself, but let's say 4 and 2. Let's say you play New Year's Day, you play New Year's Eve. Those 6 games on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day, and you have a traditional bowl holiday on New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. And then after those results, you look at the conclusion of all of that and say, okay, +1, who should be playing in the national championship game? Or do we go to a 14 playoff from there? So think of it this way. I think I've got it here. Yeah, here we go. In 2021, Michigan and Utah would have played in the Rose Bowl. Alabama would have hosted the Sugar Bowl. Pitt, the Orange Bowl, and Baylor, the Fiesta Bowl. And so then I filled in the other spots in the New Year's 6 bowl games with the other top 12 teams in the country. So your Rose Bowl is Michigan, Utah. Your Sugar is Bama, Michigan State. Your Orange, Pitt, Notre Dame. Your Fiesta, Baylor, and Ole Miss. Your Peach Bowl would have been Georgia, Oklahoma State, and your Cotton Bowl game, Ohio State and Cincinnati. And then if you're going to play a playoff after that, so all those games mattered. So we reinstitute the value and validity and importance of the New Year's Day bowl games because they're going to produce the playoff teams. And then you play the playoff off of those winners. So if all the favorites would have won those matchups that I just read off in 2021, your 14 playoff would have been Alabama, Michigan, Georgia, and Baylor. After the New Year's Bowl games. In 2020, Ohio State and Oregon would have played in the Rose Bowl. Alabama would have hosted Indiana in the Sugar Bowl. Clemson and Georgia would have played in the Orange Bowl. The Fiesta would have been the Big 12 champion, Oklahoma taking on Texas A&M. And then the Peach Bowl would have been Florida, Cincinnati, and the Cotton Bowl, Notre Dame and Iowa State. Okay? If all the favorites would have won, then you would have had a 14 playoff of Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Notre Dame. Now, not all the favorites are going to win those games. I just think that solves both issues. The issue of earning your way into the playoff on the field, and then it also maintains the importance and the value and the attractiveness of the New Year's Day bowl games. but we're not going to get that anymore because there's only going to be 2 conferences, or maybe 3. I hope the Big 12 is able to hang on. I hope the ACC is able to hang on. And understand, everybody, that I truly believe that the reason all of this is a mess is because there's no power structure. There's no commissioner. There's no governing body to do what's best for the entire sport. So everybody just acts on their own behalf. We all would do the same thing. If you're the commissioner of the Big Ten, you're going to do what's best for the Big Ten. You're not going to care about what the SEC does, or if the ACC folds, or the Big 12 folds, or the Pac-12 folds. You are the commissioner of the Big Ten. But if you had a commissioner over the sport, well, that person's role and purpose and mission is to do what's best for the sport nationally. And that would be to look out for the Pac-12. Maybe I need to produce this video. It's fantasy land, but what college football should look like. What it should look like. It should be 5 or 6 conferences that aren't too large, that are, let's say, 12 teams, that represent those areas of the country. The Pac-12 in the West, the Big Ten in the Midwest, maybe an Eastern Conference that represents the Northeast and the Upper Atlantic, the ACC, the SEC, and the Big 12. And then those conferences are balanced in such a way that are nearly balanced and equitable, and all play similar seasons and produce a playoff. That's the way it should be. Brandon says professional leagues have revenue sharing agreements that apply to the whole league, so each individual team cares about the overall state of the league. Exactly. If you're the New York Yankees, you actually do kind of care about the Cleveland Indians, or whatever they call themselves now, the Kansas City Royals, the Pittsburgh Pirates, the Milwaukee Brewers, the small market teams, because you need somebody to play, and they need to be fairly healthy. That's why the NFL works so well. The NFL works well for a number of reasons. One is that since they only play 1 game a week, they only have national TV contracts. Therefore, the size of the local market doesn't matter. The size of the local market, because the only thing that they're making extra money on are radio rights in the local market. So when the New York Giants and the New York Jets broadcast to the local New York City market, they can make more money on the radio than the Green Bay Packers can, reaching the entire state of Wisconsin. But that is so minuscule, and that meant something in the 1940s, but in the 2020s, that doesn't mean much. That just means a few more pennies for the New York teams rather than the Green Bay team. But the rest of it's all national television contract. That's the only place they play all their games. So they split the pie, and you can make just as much money in Green Bay, Wisconsin as you can in New York City. And so it works perfectly. Baseball's different. There's local TV, therefore New York can make a zillion times more money than Kansas City or Cleveland or Pittsburgh or Milwaukee. D-Rock Irish read an article today indicating 40% of the entire Pac-12 revenue, TV revenue, comes from USC and UCLA. That would not surprise me, much similar to what I would guesstimate that to be for the Big 12, with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. I posted a tweet today Yeah, I'm not quite understanding of what is dog water. So we have Stefan, who is letting us know of various teams, most notably BYU, that is dog water. Okay, if we see too many more of those, it's about time to put old Stefan in timeout because it's just unnecessary. We get your point. Well, we don't get your point, but we see your message. Dog water, I assume, would be the water left in the bath that you bathe the dog in. So, okay, we've seen that enough. Okay. D4 Sports, who do you think rank in the top 5 of national brands in college football? National brands, I would believe the top 5 would be Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, Alabama. That's a tough one because then you got USC, LSU, Texas, Oklahoma. I'm going to go Ohio State, Notre Dame, Michigan, Alabama, USC. Papa B, do you think conference expansions help teams like Mississippi State and Ole Miss financially? It helps them. Yes, they're going to be making $25 or $30 million more per year with Oklahoma and Texas involved in that TV contract. But from the standpoint, somebody else to put in timeout, in regards to getting lost in the SEC, Mississippi State and Ole Miss 40 years ago were 2 of 10 teams in the SEC. Now they're 2 of 16 and maybe 18 or 20 or 22, and you get lost and you become insignificant. For Billy, am I getting a boost? Yes, we're getting a boost here. I appreciate everybody watching the videos. And I am coming up with all sorts of ideas for more videos concerning this Big Ten, SEC war of attrition, ACC survival, Big 12 survival, Pac-12 probably past survival. The Pac-12 situation, if you care about all athletics, is interesting because they are so strong. The Pac-12, even losing USC and UCLA, is so strong athletically outside of football that I would think that the remainder, I don't know. I shouldn't say for sure that there might be a fighting chance for the remainder of the Pac-12 to try to pull in some Mountain West schools and salvage something, and would never be able to match the other conferences in football, but maintain a sports conference. All right, folks. We appreciate everybody being here at the Voice of College Football. A nice, strong crowd on the line. Thank you so much for being here and supporting us. We'll be back on, let's see, we've got a Monday show scheduled at noon Eastern time. I'm going to have to check on holiday plans. That could be preempted, possibly. So stay tuned for that. Again, Monday at noon Eastern time is our next scheduled call-in show. Please hit the like button. Also, keep in mind that if you would like to write for us, you can sign up at voiceofcollegefootball.com. Just go to the top of the screen where it says write for us. Then you'll be in contact with me. Of course, please, when you shop Amazon, use our link in the description section. If, for example, you're going to be spending $100 at Amazon anyway, instead of sending a company with $1.6 trillion that entire $100, send a buck or two here to the Voice of College Football. Join our Discord. Our Discord is humming. You can talk college football, just like you are right here in the live chat. You can do that 24/7, 365. Join our Discord. You can also take part in after show live streams with Tim and who else is over there? Tim and Eric and Exploring with Ben. All sorts of good conversation after the show. Just sign up at Patreon. Go to Patreon, search Mark Rogers TV, and sign up right there, and I will get you your Discord link. Keep in mind that we've got college football shows all week. All right. I guess we got to block people now. Okay. Keep in mind that we've got college football shows all week, team-specific live streams that we present to you each and every Tuesday with USC, Iowa, and Nebraska. That's Tuesday, USC at 4 Eastern, Iowa 5:30 Eastern, and Nebraska at 7 Eastern. Then Wednesday is our Ohio State, Michigan, Florida State, Miami day. Ohio State typically at 1:30 on Wednesday. And then we've got Michigan at 5, Florida State at 6, Miami at 7 on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, we go live with Miami Talk at 8 o'clock Eastern time Thursday night. And then on Friday, it's Oklahoma at 12:30 Eastern and West Virginia at 8. All right, folks, appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. I am going to continue my work on the video comparing Cal, Stanford, Washington, Oregon, Utah, and Colorado membership qualifications for the Big Ten. That'll be posted in the morning, and we will attack this expansion issue concerning the Big Ten, the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, trying to survive in every possible way. If you have any requests, please send them to me at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Have a great night, a great holiday. God bless America. Happy Independence Day, and we will see you soon.